Hey guys, tonight we slip into the walls, into the narrow, breathless spaces most people pretend don't exist. The gaps between beams and pipes, the slivers of darkness that separate your life from someone else's hidden one. Somewhere in New York City, a woman lives alone, or so she thinks. But sometimes when the radiators go quiet and the city noise dips just low enough, she hears it knock. 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 A rhythm too slow to be the wind and far too intentional to ignore. You might think you're safe in your apartment, your little box in the sky. But after tonight, you'll never hear a creak in the wall the same way again. You probably won't survive this with your sanity fully intact. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. Now dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. Rain whispers against the glass of apartment 6B, a gentle patter that seems to lull the city's breath. Inside, Claire Sutton sits cross-legged on a navy velvet couch, eyes half-closed, headphones clamped tightly over her ears. She isn't listening to music. White noise hisses in both ears, her therapist's idea. A trick for sleep. A distraction from the other sounds, the ones she says she doesn't hear. It's been 3 nights since she moved into the rent-stabilized one-bedroom on the Upper West Side. The walls are a faded ivory, the kind that has absorbed decades of smoke and stories. The ceiling dips slightly in the corner. The wood floor groans like old lungs under each step. The place is small, but Claire doesn't mind. She likes small, compact, predictable. Tonight, though, there's that sound again. She removes the headphones slowly. Breath, held fingers twitching at the ear cups. The apartment answers her silence with its own hush. Then faintly, knock. She blinks. Knock, knock. 3 taps. Measured, like someone rapping knuckles against drywall with care. Not too loud, not threatening. But there, she closes her eyes. She doesn't want this again. The first time she thought it was pipes. The second, she assumed it was a neighbor rearranging furniture. But now it's the 3rd time, and it's always the same 3 slow knocks. Always after midnight. Always from the same wall, the east wall, the one behind her bookshelf. There's no adjoining apartment there. Just another unit's kitchen stacked above and beyond. That the old freight elevator shaft that hasn't worked in decades. She stands her slippers, making no sound against the rug, and walks slowly to the wall. Presses her palm flat against the cool surface. Silence. Her breathing is shallow. She holds it again, and then, knock. It vibrates through her skin this time. Not loud, but close. Intimate. She jerks her hand back. Claire tells herself what her therapist said. Your mind will chase patterns if you let it. Observe, but don't attach. She returns to the couch, pulls the blanket up, white noise back on. The knock doesn't come again that night. The next day, Claire visits the doorman, Marvin. He's in his 60s, genial, always with a puzzle book on his lap. Any complaints about noise last night, she asks casually. Marvin peers up, adjusting his reading glasses. From you. No, from anyone else, near 6B maybe. He frowns, scratches his chin. Not that I heard. Most of the floor's been empty a while. A few long-term tenants, but they're quiet types. Claire nods and forces a smile. Thanks. That night she moves the bookshelf. It's heavier than it looks, and behind it the wall is dusty, marked with faint outlines of old picture frames. Her fingers trail across a vertical seam, a crack. The paint has chipped slightly there. It's not centered. Slightly to the left, almost where the floorboard dips. She presses her ear to it. Nothing. Then the heater kicks on and she startles. The moment is lost. Still, she leaves the bookshelf moved for now. At 1:12 a.m., the knocking comes again. Not 3 this time, just 1. A single slow knock. She sits upright in bed, cold sweat prickling her collarbone. She doesn't move. The apartment feels suspended in that moment like a lung refusing to exhale. No more knocks come that night. Morning brings sunlight through sheer curtains. Claire sips coffee slowly, staring at the wall. She wonders if someone's messing with her. A prank, a raccoon in the vents. She searches online, finds an old architectural map of the building buried deep in a forum about pre-war NYC apartment layouts. Apartment 6B shows no shared wall on the east side. In fact, the records suggest there's about 2 feet of space between her wall and the brick outer edge of the building. Just space. Nothing should be in there. So where are the knocks coming from? That evening, she talks to her upstairs neighbor, a retired school teacher named Mrs. Delaney. The woman's sweet, sharp-eyed, and speaks with the precise tone of someone used to third graders. "I heard you had a noise," Mrs. Delaney says, leaning on her cane. Claire nods. Tapping on the wall. Always the same spot. Always late. Delaney hums. "I've lived here 32 years. That wall's always been strange." Claire blinks. "Strange how?" Delaney shrugs. "I used to hear it too. When I first moved in. It stopped after I started sleeping with a Bible under my pillow. Silly maybe, but it worked." Claire forces a laugh. "You think it's haunted?" The old woman's eyes are serious now. "No, not haunted. Just occupied." Later, as night folds the sky over the city, Claire lies in bed with a book on her chest, light off, letting her eyes adjust to the dark. She doesn't wear the headphones this time. At 12:47 a.m. the knock comes again, but this time it's followed by a whisper, too faint to catch the words, but undeniably human. Claire's eyes widen. She rises, grabs her phone, tiptoes toward the wall. Her breath fogs the screen as she raises it flashlight on. A faint handprint, too small for an adult, too fresh to have been there yesterday. She doesn't scream. She simply backs away. Back to the couch, back to the blanket, and she waits. Not for sleep, but for the next knock. The handprint fades by morning like it had been made from breath or fog instead of oil or dirt. Claire runs her finger along the wall where it had been nothing. The surface is dry and cool. Not even a smudge left behind. No evidence except the tension tightening her chest, the shallow edge of each breath. She doesn't tell anyone. Not Marvin. Not Mrs. Delaney. Not even her therapist. Because the minute she tries to explain, she knows how it will sound. She doesn't need that look again, the one that mixes sympathy with slow suspicion, like they're waiting for the other shoe to drop from her mind. Instead, she stays in, watches the wall, counts the knocks, and listens for the whisper. It happens again the next night. Not a knock this time, a scrape, long and soft, like fingertips dragging across wood. Claire jerks awake. 2:03 a.m. She sits up, eyes locked on the wall, heart hammering so hard she feels it in her teeth. Scrape, scrape. Then the whisper returns. This time she hears 2 words. "Help me!" The voice is female, young, but muffled and oddly flat, like it's been pressed through cloth, like someone trying to scream through a wet towel. Claire clutches her phone records, a voice memo. But when she plays it back, there's nothing but static and her own shaky breathing. She leaves the lights on after that. 3 days pass. Claire doesn't sleep. Not really. She dozes and slivers, drinks coffee like it's medicine, doesn't open the blinds, doesn't shower. Her messages go unanswered. The city continues without her. She checks the wall constantly. Then one afternoon, just as the radiator hums on, she sees it again. A second handprint, smaller than the first, pressed lower on the wall, at child height. Claire stares. Something cold prickles her scalp like every hair is shrinking. This one doesn't fade quickly. It stays, a faint outline in grime perfectly shaped. She doesn't touch it. She just picks up her phone and searches again. This time she goes deeper. Not architectural forums, not tenant reviews, but the archives. The city's digital records of property deaths, unresolved missing persons fires, gas leaks, sealed legal documents, anything tied to this building. She finds nothing until she doesn't. A news clipping from 2001, title, Missing girl, last seen in Upper West apartment building. The photo is grainy. A girl maybe 9 with a bowl haircut and too large jacket. Smiling. Her name Isabel Crane. Last known address 234W 74th Street, Apt 5A. Claire's building, but not her unit, a floor below. She reads on. Isabel vanished one evening while home alone. Mother returned from work to find the door locked, everything intact, but Isabel gone. No signs of forced entry, no evidence of a struggle. The building was searched. The alley, the freight elevator shaft, nothing. The case was cold within 2 years. Claire leans back in her chair, the article trembling in her fingers. Her window is cracked open slightly, letting in the hum of passing traffic and a late summer breeze. She looks toward the wall. The handprint is still there, only now. It's joined by another, but this one isn't a hand, it's a face. Pressed faintly in the dust is the imprint of a cheek, a nose, the curve of a mouth. Slightly turned, like someone leaned their whole face against the wall from the inside. Claire stumbles back, nearly knocking over a lamp. She doesn't scream. She whispers, "Isabel." There's no reply, just silence. And then a new sound, tapping, but not knocks. It's faster, like fingers drumming in a panic. Claire can't move. She's cold to the bone, her brain folding in on itself. She wants to run, but her legs are locked. The tapping stops suddenly, then a knock. 3 slow, deliberate, followed by a small breath. She hears it behind her. She turns. Nothing there. She's alone. Except she isn't. The next morning she brings Marvin coffee. She needs answers. "You ever hear of a girl named Isabel Crane?" She asks casually, careful not to sound too invested. Marvin pauses mid-sip. "That name sounds familiar." Claire leans in. "I think her family lived here," he says slowly. "It was a big thing back when I first started. Some girl vanished. They said she probably ran off." He shrugs uneasy. "You know, people got all kinds of theories. Cops found squatters in the basement. Some said she fell down the elevator shaft and got sealed up during renovations. Others thought..." He trails off. "What?" He looks over his shoulder, then back at Claire. "They used to say she was still here. Some folks heard her crying, tapping on the walls. Nonsense, of course." Claire doesn't say anything. She just nods and drinks her coffee. That night she sleeps with the lights off. Something in her wants to know now. Not avoid, not run. The knock doesn't come until nearly 3 a.m. But when it does, it's not on the wall. It's on her bedroom door. 3 slow knocks. Claire sits up, heart slamming against her ribs. The apartment is pitch dark. She listens, hard. Then, a voice. Right outside the door. Not a whisper this time, not a plea. Just one sentence. "Don't open it." Claire covers her mouth with both hands. The doorknob clicks gently, not turning, just moving, like someone brushing against it from the other side. She doesn't move. She doesn't breathe. The silence stretches long. Then softly the knob stills. No more sounds. Claire remains frozen until dawn. When morning comes, she opens the door slowly. The hallway is empty. But pressed faintly into the outside of the door, another handprint. Smaller than before, lower, as if Isabel isn't standing anymore, as if she's crawling. The day moves like syrup. Claire's body functions in a kind of automatic haze. Coffee toast dishes, though she doesn't taste anything. Her mind loops back to the doorknob, the whisper, the handprint. She tries to convince herself it could have been a dream, a very vivid sensory dream. She tells herself that until the moment she looks at the door again and sees the handprint hasn't faded. It's not grime, not residue. It's pressure, the kind you see when someone breathes hard against glass. There's no way to explain it. And yet explaining it would be easier than accepting the truth. That night, she takes a chair from the kitchen and presses it under the doorknob. Not to lock the door, just to notice if it moves. She also sets her phone on the shelf opposite the bedroom with the camera aimed squarely at the door. She doesn't tell anyone. Not Marvin, not Mrs. Delaney. She just waits. The lights are off. No sound machine. Just the night and its long, pulsing stillness. At 2:41 a.m., the chair creaks. Claire jolts awake. The room is dark, but her eyes are open. She didn't hear the knock this time, just the faint shift of the chair's wooden legs dragging on the floor. She stares into the black and wills her limbs not to move. From the other side of the room, her phone screen suddenly flickers on. A notification. The motion sensor detected activity. She doesn't get up immediately. She stays in bed for nearly an hour, heart pounding with every creak the building makes. Then, slowly, with deliberate steps, she walks to the phone, picks it up, and opens the video. The footage is dark, illuminated only by the light from the street lamps beyond the living room window. The bedroom door is still. The chair is visible. Then, at timestamp 2:41:07, the doorknob trembles, just slightly, like fingers brushing across it, then curling. The chair doesn't fall. It leans, tips, and gently settles again. Then nothing. Claire rewinds it frame by frame. There's no one in the hallway, no shadow, no shape, just the movement, unmistakable and real. The next day, she emails the video to herself, then backs it up twice. She doesn't plan to share it. Not yet. But she wants proof. Something to remind herself it happened, that she didn't imagine it, that she isn't slipping. Not again. She Googles Isabel Crane. Not just the articles now, but the obscure stuff. Message boards, Reddit threads. One post stands out, dated from 2009. It's buried in a forum about urban legends titled Crane Girl in the Vents. Claire clicks. The post is short. A user claiming they lived in the same building for 2 months, heard scratching, found tiny things missing spoons, socks, batteries. Once the poster woke up to a breath on their cheek. They moved out quickly. The post ends with, "Maybe it was raccoons, but raccoons don't whisper your name." Claire stares at the screen, then goes still. Her name. That night, as she brushes her teeth, she plays back the whisper from 3 nights ago. She hadn't caught it before, just assumed it was noise. But this time, with headphones slowed down, volume raised, she hears it. The words again. "Help me, Claire." She drops the phone. It clatters into the sink. She stares at herself in the mirror. The reflection doesn't feel right. Her own eyes look distant, like they're looking past her. Her mouth feels dry. She doesn't remember telling anyone her name aloud. Not in the apartment. Not near the wall. Not even to Mrs. Delaney or Marvin in that tone of voice. She doesn't remember ever saying it. So how does the voice know? That night, she doesn't sleep. She just lies on the couch, facing the wall, eyes open. She doesn't wait long. At 1:12 a.m., the taps return. But this time, they're not on the wall. They're in the ceiling, light, scuttling, like something moving between beams. Her gaze follows the sound across the plaster past the light fixture across the vent. It stops. Then, tap, 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 tap. The ceiling vent vibrates slightly. Claire rises slowly and walks toward it, stands directly underneath, holds her breath. The vent grill is old, painted over. She's never removed it. It's roughly the size of a dinner plate. She drags a chair beneath it and climbs up, hands shaking. Her fingers touch the edges. She pulls gently. The vent gives way with a pop and a small shower of dust. Inside, darkness, deeper than it should be. The shaft extends farther than she thought, more like a tunnel than a vent. Maybe an old access duct, a storage channel. Then she sees them, 2 small eyes glinting faintly from the far end. Wide, unblinking. Claire gasps, almost falls off the chair. The eyes disappear. She drops the vent cover, scrambles back down, heart pounding so hard she hears it in her ears. Nothing follows. Nothing else moves. She sleeps with the lights on. In the morning, she checks the vent again. The grill is shut. like it never opened. But when she walks into the kitchen, one of her spoons is gone. Only one. Claire stares at the space in the utensil drawer for a long time. It's absurd how something as small as a missing spoon can feel like confirmation of something impossible. She counts them again. 7, not 8. It was always 8. She remembers buying them, remembers the way the last one had a slight scratch near the edge. She always used it for stirring tea. Now it's gone. She checks the sink, the dishwasher, the trash, every surface. Nothing. She opens the cabinet under the sink, half expecting it to roll out like a joke. Nothing. The spoon is gone, and she knows why. The eyes in the vent weren't a dream. They watched her. She saw them. Wide, childlike, far too real to have been imagined. But what does she do with that knowledge? Tell someone. Call the police. And say what exactly? There's a child living in my walls. She took my spoon. No one would believe her. Worse, they might investigate her instead. She's been through that kind of questioning before. She doesn't want to go back there, so she does nothing. But she watches and waits. That night, she sleeps in the living room away from the vent. She sets up her phone again, this time facing the ceiling. Another one records the hallway outside the bedroom door. She sets an alarm every hour, just so she never fully drifts off. And each time it goes off, she wakes in the same position, eyes dry, head pounding, hands clutched tight under the blanket. At 3:08 a.m., she hears movement, soft, deliberate. Not a knock, not a whisper. Something dragging, something thin and dry, sliding over wood, like a hand or hair. She doesn't move. The sound continues for maybe 15 seconds. Then silence. She listens harder, wondering if she imagined it, when suddenly a new sound rises from the vent. A child's hum. Barely more than a breath, but rhythmic. Claire's mouth goes dry. The song, it's familiar. Not from a radio. Not from memory. Something primal. A lullaby, maybe. Half forgotten. Or never really known. It loops broken like a child humming to herself in the dark. Then it stops. The silence feels worse. She stays frozen until sunrise. When she checks the phone footage, there's nothing. No eyes, no movement, no home. Just her own motionless figure in the dim light of the living room. And then at 3:09:24, the frame shakes, only slightly, as if something moved behind the wall next to her. She rewinds it, plays it again, frame by frame. There it is, a shadow passing just behind the drywall, almost human. Almost. The next afternoon, Claire finds herself standing outside apartment 5A. The door is old scuffed paint peeling in the corners. There's no nameplate, no wreath or welcome mat. Just a cold brass peephole and a mailbox slot beneath it, sealed with tape. She raises her hand to knock, then stops. Something about it feels wrong. Like knocking would wake something. She lowers her hand. Marvin finds her in the hallway a few minutes later. "You good?" he asks gently. "I used to live here," she lies, just remembering. He nods. 5A's been empty for a long time, ever since the last tenant disappeared. Her breath catches. Disappeared? Well, not officially. He just stopped paying rent. Never came to get his stuff. No one saw him move. Cops checked, said he must have left town. But Marvin leans in a little voice lower now. They didn't find anything missing. His wallet was on the counter. Shoes by the door. Phone still charging. Claire feels a chill race down her spine. When was this? Marvin shrugs. 6 years ago, 7, I lose track. Was his name Crane, she asks. Marvin furrows his brow. No, not the same family. Why? No reason, Claire says softly, just wondering. That night she dreams of crawling. The dream is vivid. Claire is in the duct belly pressed to cold metal, her arms outstretched, fingers scraped raw. She sees a soft blue glow ahead like a TV left on in a distant room. She crawls toward it, the space getting tighter, pressing against her ribs, her shoulders, her throat. Then she sees her, the girl, knees tucked under her face, pale and expressionless. Her hair floats slightly as though underwater. Her eyes are black and endless. The blue light pulses behind her. Claire tries to speak, but no sound comes. Her mouth is full of dust. The girl leans forward, whispers something, then her hand reaches out and Claire wakes, gasping, lungs aching like she's been holding her breath for hours. Her blanket is tangled around her ankles. Her throat is dry and sore. She tastes iron. Her nose is bleeding. She doesn't sleep again that night. By the time the sun rises, Claire has made a decision. She pulls the bookshelf away, peels the chipped paint from the wall. With a kitchen knife, she traces the faint vertical crack she'd noticed weeks ago. Pushes. A panel shifts inward with a soft click. Dust falls. The smell is immediate. Old wood, dry mold, rust. Behind the panel is a narrow space less than 2 feet wide. Vertical shafts run between the walls, black with age. Old ductwork, possibly plumbing access from decades ago. She reaches in with her flashlight. The beam hits something metallic, something shiny. She pulls it out. It's her spoon, and beside it, a child's sock. Tiny, pink, faded to gray. She doesn't cry. She just places the spoon on the counter and stares into the vent behind the wall. Something is there, watching. Claire doesn't eat that day. Her stomach knots every time she thinks about the vent, about the spoon, the sock. She sits at the kitchen table with her hands wrapped around a lukewarm cup of tea, staring at the dark slit in the wall where the panel opened. She hasn't closed it. Can't. It feels like closing. It would mean pretending again. Pretending there's nothing in there. Pretending she didn't see those eyes, didn't hear her name. Didn't dream about a little girl watching her from the end of a narrow duct lit in impossible blue. She leaves the lights on, even in the daytime. That evening, she goes to the hardware store and buys a small inspection camera, one of those snake-like tools electricians use. It's flexible and slender, about the width of a finger, with a dim LED light on the tip. She returns home and waits until the sky has darkened completely, as if the truth only feels real when the city slips into shadow. Kneeling by the wall, she feeds the camera into the gap behind the panel. The live footage streams to her phone. First dust, then a vertical duct corroded in places. A spider skitters past the lens. Further, an insulation droops like old skin. She inches the camera deeper, then pauses. Something flickers past. Not light, not motion. Color, a smudge of pink. She reverses slightly, then holds still. The camera's light lands on it, a child's drawing. A scrap of paper torn unevenly, taped to the metal interior. Faded crayon lines. A stick figure in red. Another in blue. A square shape with tiny loops, windows maybe. Below, in scrawled handwriting, home. Claire's breath catches. She edges the camera around. More paper. Dozens of them. Taped, pinned, even stapled to the inside of the duct. All drawn by a child's hand. Some show a small girl holding hands with taller shapes. Some show a dark box. One shows a large eye. The eye stares out from the center of the paper, its pupil filled in black with pressing, scribbled fury. Claire pulls the camera back quickly. Her hands tremble. She doesn't sleep that night. She doesn't even try. At 4:00 a.m., the lights flicker. Then something knocks. Not the slow, deliberate knock from before. Not 3 taps. Just one. Boom. A loud, heavy thump directly above the vent. Claire jerks upright, hard in her throat. It's followed by the sound of something sliding. Something heavy being dragged inside the wall like weight, scraping against metal. Then silence. She doesn't move for the next 2 hours. Only when the first threads of daylight hit the curtain does she rise, step barefoot across the cold floor, and seal the wall again. She doesn't hammer it shut. Just slides the panel back in place and pushes the bookshelf tightly against it. Out of sight, out of reach, but not out of mind. She walks the city for hours that day, letting the noise and motion blur into numbness. At some point, she finds herself sitting on a park bench with no memory of how she got there. A mother walks by with a stroller. A child laughs in the distance. Life continues, unaware. When she returns home, the apartment feels wrong, too quiet. She checks the bookshelf. It hasn't moved, but when she presses her palm to the wall behind it, the surface is warm, like someone has been breathing there. That night, she places salt around the room. She doesn't really believe in it. Not really. But Mrs. Delaney's Bible trick echoes in her head, and Claire figures a line of salt can't hurt. She circles the bed, the couch, the bookshelf. A narrow, unbroken ring. Then she sits in the middle of her living room, hands on her knees, phone in her lap. The air feels thick, the silence pressing. Her ears ring slightly from it. At 2:17 a.m., the bookshelf creaks. Claire's heart drops. Then again, a soft shifting sound. The wall behind it breathes an exhale, faint but undeniable. Her breath quickens. She doesn't move. Something whispers her name. Claire. The voice is fragile, not menacing. It sounds tired, distant. Then the bookshelf trembles slightly and something slides out from beneath it. A small object, just over the salt line. It stops at her feet. She stares at it. A single crayon. Red. Claire doesn't touch the crayon. She stares at it for a long time, as if the red wax might twitch or melt or curl into something unnatural. But it just lies there like any other child's crayon, short-worn label peeling. Still, the presence of it makes the room feel smaller, the air tighter. She breathes through her nose, slow and shallow, and leans forward to examine the salt ring. The line is intact, unbroken. The crayon sits just outside of it, like it had been placed with care, or thrown with precision. Something inside the wall had known exactly how far it could reach. She rises carefully, stepping around the salt circle, and scoops the crayon up with a napkin. It's warm. Not from the room, but from within, like it had been held. She places it inside a Ziploc bag and seals it shut. Then she calls Mrs. Delaney. The phone rings 5 times before the old woman answers. Hello, her voice is groggy, confused. Sorry, Claire whispers. I need to ask something. You said the Bible helped. Do you still have it? There's a pause. You heard her too. Claire's stomach knots. Yes, I think so. She's never gone, Mrs. Delaney says, voice dry with sleep. Only quiet. She sleeps when you ignore her. Who is she? Another pause. The girl in the vents. Claire swallows hard. What happened to her? Delaney sighs. She was forgotten. The next day, Claire visits a used bookstore in Midtown and buys an old Bible. She doesn't know what she believes, doesn't even open it. She just places it under her pillow that night and curls up on the couch, salt refreshed, every door locked. The vents are closed. Every light is off except a small lamp in the corner. She waits. Midnight comes and passes. No knock, no hum, no dragging. She lets herself home, just a little. At 3:00 a.m., the power cuts. Everything snaps off. The lamp, the fridge, the hallway light. The room is swallowed in sudden black. Claire's eyes open wide. Then the knocking begins. Not slow, fast. Knock, 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 knock. Like a panicked child slamming their fists against the walls. She shoots upright. The knocking comes from every direction. From behind the couch, from the bookshelf, from the kitchen cabinet doors. A frantic, urgent thudding. It's not a haunting. It's a tantrum. Then from inside the wall, a scream. High-pitched, ragged. Claire covers her ears, heart-racing, teeth clenched. She wants to run, but there's nowhere to go. No escape from walls. Then silence. Everything stops. The lights flicker back on. The apartment is still again. Except one thing has changed. The salt ring has been broken. At the corner nearest the bookshelf, a clean line of empty wood. Something crawled through it. Claire stares at it. Then at the couch. A small shape now rests on the armrest. Another crayon. Blue. She doesn't pick it up. She doesn't scream. She just walks to the bathroom, locks. The door curls up in the tub and waits for morning. When sunlight returns, it doesn't bring comfort. The walls feel closer, breathing, throbbing with memory. Claire eats dry cereal by hand, not trusting herself to use utensils. The last spoon vanished. She doesn't want to lose more. She replays the footage from the night before, but the power outage left the phone useless. The screen is black. It caught nothing. And still the crayons remain. One red, one blue. She places them side by side on the kitchen counter like offerings. Then she speaks aloud, not sure who she's speaking to. "What do you want?" Silence. Then from somewhere behind the bookshelf, "Draw with me." The voice is faint, younger than before, but sad, empty. Claire exhales shakily. "I can't." No reply. That evening, she dreams again. She's back in the duct, only this time she's not crawling. She's watching. She sees herself curled on the couch, tossing in sleep, mouth slightly open. She sees the wall behind her shimmer, then part. A small hand emerges first, then an arm, then a girl no older than 8, covered in dust and bruises. Her eyes are dark, her lips cracked. She crawls out of the vent and kneels beside Claire's sleeping body. Gently, she reaches into Claire's pocket and pulls out a crayon. "Green," she grins, then turns to look directly into the dream Claire's eyes and mouths the words, "Thank you." Claire jolts awake. There's something in her hand, a drawing, crumpled, still warm. She unfolds it slowly. 3 figures, one small, one medium, one tall, all holding hands, beneath scrawled in uneven letters, "Now you're here too." Claire doesn't know how long she sits there holding the drawing. The paper is coarse yellowed at the edges, as if it had existed for far longer than one night. The crayon lines are pressed deep into the fibers, almost engraved. The figures herself included are featureless, but the shape of the hair, the slope of the shoulders, the length of the limbs, they're unmistakable. She's the tall one. Isabel is the small one. The medium figure in the center is unknown. She wonders if it's the man who vanished from 5A or someone else who never made it out. She wonders how many names she hasn't heard yet. She folds the paper carefully and tucks it in the drawer beside the couch as though it might matter later. Then she goes to the bathroom, washes her hands, and stares at her reflection for a long time. Her skin is pale, her eyes heavy with sleeplessness. She looks like someone who has spent weeks in a war no one else can see. She brushes her hair back, touches the space beneath her eyes, then steps back into the apartment, somehow expecting it to look different now that she's been marked. But everything remains in its place. Quiet. Still. Waiting. She leaves the apartment around noon. Walks without a destination, turning only when the street noise becomes too much or too little. Eventually, she ends up in a quiet section of Riverside Park. She finds a bench under a rustling tree and lets herself sit in the soft light of late morning, the breeze on her neck like a reminder of something real. It takes nearly an hour before she notices the small shape at her feet. A folded piece of paper slightly crumpled, tucked between the roots. Her heart seizes. She hesitates, then picks it up with 2 fingers. It's blank, but when she flips it over, one corner has been carefully colored in red. Just a corner, nothing else. Claire puts it in her pocket and walks home faster than before. When she enters the apartment, the air feels different. The temperature is the same, but the stillness is charged, like someone had been walking in circles until the very second she opened the door. The crayons are gone from the counter. In their place is a fresh drawing. It's taped to the wall now, just beside the vent. No figures this time. Only a square room, a small bed, a dark circle in one corner, and a pair of eyes drawn inside that circle. At the bottom, in the same blocky handwriting, "Come in." Claire rips it down without thinking, crumples it, and throws it into the trash under the sink. She slams the cabinet door shut, wipes her palms on her jeans, and then turns to find a second copy of the same drawing resting on the coffee table. She hadn't even heard it land. She doesn't scream, doesn't speak, just picks it up, and this time she places it gently on the bookshelf beside the sealed wall. She talks to Isabel again that night, not with hope or fear, but with a quiet sort of resignation. Why me? She whispers to the vent, lying flat on the floor so her face hovers inches from the cover. Why not someone else? At first there's nothing. Then you saw me. Claire closes her eyes. I didn't mean to. A pause. Then I was lonely. The words don't sound like threats. They sound like truths. Not demands, but facts. She wonders how long Isabel had been watching. Years, probably. Decades. Watching new tenants come and go. Some who stayed too long. Some who never noticed her at all. She doesn't ask how many others. She doesn't want to know. Instead, she whispers, "What do you want now?" Silence for a moment. Then you're already here. Claire's breath hitches. No, I'm not. But even as she says it, she knows something has changed. She hasn't left the building in days aside from that walk. She hasn't spoken to anyone besides Marvin and Mrs. Delaney. She hasn't made a phone call in nearly a week. The isolation is no longer a condition, it's a location. She's moving deeper, not away. She's becoming part of the apartment of the space between its walls. That night, she dreams of the drawings again. But this time, she's the one holding the crayon. Claire wakes with red smudges on her fingertips. Faint, but undeniable. She stares at them under the bathroom light, rubbing them together as if friction might erase them. Her heart beats slow and heavy like it's moving through syrup. She doesn't remember touching the crayon. Doesn't remember holding anything at all. Yet the color is there pressed into the grooves of her skin like ink into paper. She turns on the faucet and scrubs her hands. The color fades, but doesn't fully vanish. Her nails remain tinted like a child's after an afternoon of coloring. The sink water runs pink before swirling down the drain. The rest of the apartment is unchanged, but the feeling in the air is different. The silence now feels thick-weighted, as if the space is holding its breath. Claire walks through each room, slowly checking corners, vents, under the couch, the back of the bookshelf. Nothing has moved, but she notices new details. Scratches on the floorboards just beside the heating grate. Small, narrow ones, as if tiny fingers had clawed gently, persistently over time. In the kitchen, one cabinet door hangs slightly open, despite having been shut tightly the night before. Inside, everything is in place except the plastic container of salt. It's tipped over half empty, the fine white grains forming a thin trail down the shelf and onto the floor. Claire stares at it, then looks up almost instinctively toward the ceiling vent above the sink. It's closed, silent, but somehow she knows it isn't empty. She spends the day trying to write an email to someone, anyone, her sister, her old roommate, her therapist. But every time her fingers hover over the keys, her mind stalls. What can she say that won't sound like unraveling? That won't raise red flags and phone calls and wellness checks? She knows what they'll do. She's seen the inside of those rooms, listened to the soft voices and clicking pens. She can't go back there. Not again. So she deletes every draft, closes the laptop, and waits. That night, she dreams of drawings again. But this time, she's not alone. She sits beside a small girl in a narrow, windowless room. The walls are made of metal. The floor is lined with crumpled paper and broken crayons. The girl hums quietly, her face calm, but her eyes stay fixed on Claire's hands as they move across the page. They're drawing the same thing: a room, a door, a pair of eyes in the wall. Claire watches the crayon in her hand move without instruction. When the drawing is finished, the girl smiles and the walls of the dream begin to pulse like something is breathing from the other side. Then Claire wakes up. Her hands ache. When she looks at her fingers, the red has returned. She walks into the living room. A single drawing sits in the middle of the floor. A new one. This time it's a map. Crude but deliberate lines and corners, vents and shafts. A small square marked with an X deep within the wall. Below it, one word, me. She stares at it for a long time. Then she moves the bookshelf, then the panel. The space behind it is unchanged, tight, dark, claustrophobic, but she takes a flashlight and the inspection camera again. Kneels, breathes once, then begins. She feeds the camera deeper this time, guided by the map. Turns left at a metal joint, slides it under a rusted pipe. A bend in the duct narrows, then widens slightly. She sees it, a cloth bundle, small, dirty, wedged between a rusted beam and a broken tile. She can't reach it, not with her fingers, but the camera confirms what it is: a small blanket, pink patterned with faded flowers. She recognizes it from one of the earlier drawings. She sits back on her heels, and from behind her, clear as if spoken inches from her neck, she hears, "You found me." Claire turns, but no one is there. Of course not. But she doesn't close the panel this time. She leaves it open. Claire doesn't sleep that night. She tries curling beneath the blanket on the couch, eyes closed, breathing slow, but the silence is too full. Every creak of the building, every shift in the pipes, sounds intentional now, like movement with purpose. She keeps the flashlight near thumb, resting on the switch, waiting for the moment she'll need it. But nothing happens. No knock, no whisper, just a long stretch of heavy stillness. And yet, she feels watched the entire time. By morning, she's made a decision. She pushes the bookshelf aside again and crouches in front of the open panel. This time, she doesn't bring the camera, just her phone light and a pair of gloves. The crawl space isn't built for a person, but she's thin and desperate. She slides in slowly, elbows tight to her sides, breath held against the dust. The air smells old and metallic, tinged with mildew. Her shoulders scrape the sides, and she has to turn her face sideways to breathe. She keeps going. The passage narrows, then opens slightly into a vertical shaft. She looks up darkness. Down the same. A network of ducts and wooden beams frame the space. She follows the path she memorized from the drawing left, down slight turn past the cracked joint. Her fingers grope forward and find the blanket. She pulls it gently. It's heavier than expected, stiff with time and dust. Beneath it, she finds more tiny things nestled like relics. A cracked plastic bracelet, a Barbie shoe, the curved handle of a teacup, broken. These aren't random objects. They're tokens hoarded, carefully placed with meaning. A child's world hidden in the bones of the building. Then she hears breathing, not her own. Close, too close. Claire freezes. The air shifts. Dust stirs in the beam of her light. She turns her head, slightly illuminating the far end of the duct. Eyes, two of them, wide, unblinking, deep in the darkness. Isabel. The girl is crouched in the tightness of the bent knees, pulled to chest, hands resting on her ankles. She looks exactly as Claire imagined, small, pale, streaked with grime. Her eyes reflect light, but her face is still, silent. They stare at each other. Claire doesn't move. Isabel tilts her head, curious. Then she smiles, not wide, not menacing, just softly. Then she vanishes, not in a blink, not like a ghost. She crawls backward into the darkness, slow and silent, her body folding into shadows as though she's done it 1,000 times before. Claire lies there, frozen lungs burning. She waits until the silence settles again, then backs out the way she came, careful not to scrape too hard, not to breathe too loud. When she emerges into the living room, she's shaking. She shuts the panel, doesn't seal it, just rests the bookshelf back into place and collapses onto the floor, trembling. She doesn't cry. She's past crying. Later that day, she visits Mrs. Delaney again. The old woman opens the door and studies Claire's face before speaking. "You saw her, didn't you?" Claire nods. Mrs. Delaney sighs and steps aside to let her in. The apartment smells of tea and dust and something vaguely floral. They sit in silence for a while. Then the old woman pours them both a cup of something herbal and warm. I used to hear her, she says after a while, when I first moved in. She cried at night, whispered things I didn't want to hear. I started leaving candies in the vent, and drawings, silly things, flowers, cats. She liked those. Claire swallows. What happened when you stopped? Delaney stares into her tea. She got louder. Did you ever see her? A pause. Then once. In the hallway. Just for a second. Thought it was my imagination. Until the next day, when she left me a drawing of myself, holding a cane. Claire feels the weight of that settle. She doesn't want to hurt anyone, she says quietly. I don't think she knows how to stop watching. No, Delaney agrees. She wants company, that's all. Claire hesitates. Has anyone ever gone missing? The old woman doesn't answer right away. Then some, but not often. One girl before you. Quiet thing. Moved in upstairs. Heard the knocks. Tried to ignore them. Then stopped answering her mail. Claire closes her eyes. What happened to her? Delaney sips her tea. No one ever found out. Claire walks home slowly, the late afternoon sky turning orange behind the tall buildings. The air is heavy with city warmth, but a thin, unseen cold clings to her skin. It's not weather, it's memory. She feels it like a shadow, riding close just behind her. The conversation with Mrs. Delaney echoes in her mind, each word heavy with milk knowledge, like the woman had been waiting for someone else to understand, to step into the same space to inherit the same burden. When Claire reaches the apartment, she unlocks the door and pauses, hand on the knob, listening. Nothing. No whispers, no knocks. Still, she steps inside carefully the way someone does when they know they're not alone. The bookshelf hasn't moved. The panel remains closed, but something has changed. On the floor just beyond the entrance sits a box, small, wrapped in dull gray paper. No tag, no tape. Claire kneels beside it, hesitating only a moment before peeling back the paper. Inside is a collection of objects, a plastic ring, a folded napkin with a faint drawing of a flower, a broken coin bank shaped like a bear, and a cracked photo frame empty. At the very bottom, a piece of torn notebook paper. One word written in red crayon, stay. Claire sits back, throat tight. It isn't a threat. It's a plea. An invitation. Maybe even gratitude. She places the box on the coffee table and doesn't touch anything else. The apartment feels like it's holding its breath again. That night, she doesn't set salt, doesn't move the bookshelf. She just lays on the couch with a pillow beneath her head and the Bible unopened beneath it. She keeps the light on, not because she needs it, but because she's not sure who else might. At 1:03 a.m., the doorknob to the hallway rattles once, then stops. She doesn't move. At 1:46, the floorboards creak behind the wall, slow and careful. At 2:12, a faint hum starts near the vent, soft and off-key. Claire listens. It's the same tune from the dream, the same melody Isabel hummed while drawing. She closes her eyes and lets it carry her down into the dark. When she wakes, it's dawn. The hum is gone. But the blanket she remembers leaving folded at the end of the couch is now draped gently over her shoulders. She doesn't remember pulling it up. She stands, stretches, and walks to the kitchen. A piece of paper waits for her on the counter. Another drawing. This one shows two figures, one tall, one small, standing beside a square shape. Inside the square, a third figure is curled tightly, knees to chest, face turned away. Above them, the word together. Claire tapes the drawing beside the vent. She doesn't know what it means exactly, but somehow she knows it was meant for her. Claire begins to fall into a rhythm not unlike habit. Every morning she wakes, checks the apartment, makes tea, and looks for new drawings. Some days there's nothing. Other days, a folded page appears under the couch or slid behind a cabinet door or left in the fridge like a game. The drawings aren't always clear. Some are abstract shapes in frantic crayon swirls. Others are soft, careful renderings of a hand, a staircase, a vent, a face with no mouth. She starts collecting them, stacking them in an old manila folder that now lives on the coffee table. At night, she talks softly near the vent. Not long conversations, just questions mostly. What's your favorite color? Are you cold in there? Do you still sleep? Sometimes the air answers with a gentle knock. Sometimes silence. But the silence feels less hostile now, less hollow, like someone's listening. On the third Wednesday, Claire wakes to find all the drawings arranged in a perfect circle on the floor around the couch. She steps carefully among them, afraid to disturb the pattern. In the very center is a single green crayon untouched. She leaves it there for hours. At dusk, she draws a single shape on a napkin, a flower with 6 petals. She folds it and pushes it into the vent slot with a whisper. For you. The next morning, the crayon is gone. She starts leaving offerings, small, quiet things. A bracelet she hasn't worn in years, a pink marble, the figurine from her childhood music box. She slides them one by one into the crawl space behind the panel, never saying anything more than a word. Here, they're always gone the next day. Nothing is ever returned. But the air in the apartment lightens. The silence softens. Even the floor creaks sound gentler somehow, less like warning and more like movement. Then one night she finds a new drawing in the fridge. This one's different, drawn not in crayon, but pen. The lines are sharper, uneven, rushed. It shows the layout of the apartment, but the walls are thicker, exaggerated. Inside the drawing, she sees herself a small figure in the living room. In the walls surrounding her on all sides are dozens of eyes. Tiny circles filling the space between beams and ducts, all pointed inward. Watching. At the top of the page, scrawled larger than any note before, are the words he sees too. Claire feels her breath catch. She rereads it twice, then 3 times. The implication is clear. Isabel isn't the only one in the walls. There's someone else. A presence that doesn't draw, doesn't whisper, doesn't play. Someone that watches her and watches Isabel. A second watcher. Something heavier. That night, Claire doesn't sleep. She hears Isabel's hum for a moment around 1:00 a.m., but it cuts off suddenly, as if interrupted. Then silence. No knocks, no drawings in the morning. The next day stretches long and still. She speaks near the vent. Are you okay? No answer. She presses her palm to the wall. It feels colder than usual. That evening she finds a single crayon placed upright on the table. Black. Not her color. Not Isabel's. The paper wrapper is torn. She picks it up and turns it over in her hand. It's warm, almost hot. Claire places the black crayon on the shelf beside the Bible. She doesn't touch it again. Its warmth lingers on her fingertips longer than it should, like holding onto something still alive. The apartment is quiet, but not peacefully so. The kind of silence that comes after too much noise, like something holding its breath just out of view. She checks the vent twice that evening, once with the flashlight, once without. Nothing. The familiar presence Isabel's feels distant, withdrawn. Not gone, but hiding, avoiding. Claire whispers into the grate. Did he hurt you? No response. Not even a creak. That night, she dreams of metal corridors, endless, narrow, turning on themselves like a maze. She moves through them, without direction, barefoot, and cold. At each intersection, she sees the same thing, a dark shadow just around the corner, never fully visible. A hunched shape impossibly tall for the space, with limbs that seem too long folding over themselves as it slips out of sight. She calls out in the dream. Not for Isabel, just a wordless cry. And from somewhere far off she hears humming. Isabel's tune. Faint, shaky. Then louder, cut short by a harsh dragging sound like nails across metal. Claire jolts awake in darkness, the sheets twisted around her legs, throat-dry fingers clutched into fists. She doesn't move for an hour. The next morning, a new drawing waits, not left gently on the table. It's pinned to the bedroom wall with a bent nail stuck just above her headboard. Claire stares at it before touching it. It's not Isabel's work. The paper is lined, pulled from a notepad. The ink is dark, shaky. The sketch is rough, but clear two figures in a vent, one small and crouched, the other towering behind her, eyeless, faceless, just a shape of teeth and hands. The small one is turned away, facing Claire's side of the wall. The larger one is facing her. At the bottom, no words, only a symbol, an open eye drawn solid black, the pupil thick and uneven. Claire takes the drawing down and hides it behind the bookshelf. That night the hum doesn't return. Neither does Isabel. She begins to hear new sounds, subtle things, a tapping that isn't a knock, a kind of clicking like bones shifting gently. At 3:12 a.m., her hallway light flickers. When it steadies, she finds the Bible has been moved, now resting on the windowsill, spine open as if read. She hadn't left it there. She hadn't opened it. She checks her phone. No recordings. Her motion sensor camera app failed during the night. Corrupted, it says. The battery drained completely. She recharges it, resets everything. She doesn't speak aloud that day. Not to Isabel, not to anyone. That night, the tapping returns. Louder now. Directly behind the headboard. She doesn't move. She just listens. The taps grow faster, agitated, then stop. Silence. Then a whisper. Not Isabel. Not soft or sad. This voice is too deep. Too close. It says, "I liked it better when you were quiet." Claire doesn't sleep again for days. Claire begins sleeping during the day, dozing in short stretches when the sunlight cuts across the couch. The apartment feels different under daylight, still haunted, still watching, but less hungry. Whatever presence moves through the walls, it prefers the dark. She avoids the bedroom now, leaves the light on in the hallway at all times. The black crayon remains on the shelf untouched. The Bible, once under her pillow, stays unopened on the kitchen counter. At night, she stays on the couch, wrapped in blankets, eyes toward the vent. But Isabel hasn't returned. The gentle knocking, the crayon drawings, the soft hum, all gone. In their place, only weight, pressure, like something pacing just behind the drywall. One morning she wakes to find every cabinet in the kitchen open, drawers pulled halfway, fridge door ajar. Nothing is missing, nothing broken, but the space feels violated, not a haunting, a warning. On the table, a new note, not a drawing, typed, printed. The paper is perfectly flat, no folds or creases. It reads only one sentence. "She doesn't belong to you." Claire reads it 3 times before tearing it in half and stuffing the pieces down the garbage disposal. Her hands shake as she flips the switch and listens to the blades chew through the paper. Later, she places her hand on the wall beside the vent. She whispers, "Isabel, are you still there?" Nothing. Not even breath. She tries again. "You're not alone. I know you're afraid." The wall gives no answer, but later, as she sits at the table with tea gone cold, she sees a new drawing beneath the couch. It's crumpled and torn. A single image, Claire's own face, eyes closed, mouth stitched shut. No words. just the black crayon's heavy lines pressing into the paper like scars. That night, she sets up her phone again. Motion detection night vision. This time, she props it facing the bedroom door. She sleeps on the couch, a knife tucked beneath her pillow, not because she believes it will help, but because empty hands feel too vulnerable. Around 2:18 a.m., a creak from the hallway wakes her. The light is still on. The door remains open, but her heart is pounding, and something feels wrong. She stays frozen, eyes wide, ears tuned to every corner of the room. Her phone lights up once, twice, alerts triggered. She waits until the silence stretches too long, then picks up the device with trembling fingers. She reviews the footage. The hallway is still for hours. Then at 2:17:42, the light flickers. Not completely off, just a tremble. A second later, the shadows near the bedroom door ripple like heat off asphalt. Then just past the frame's edge, something moves. A blur, tall, unsteady. The footage stutters, glitches. The blur leans into the doorway, but the image fractures the lines, splitting like broken glass. It lingers for 10 seconds, unmoving. Then it steps backward into the wall. Claire watches the footage 3 more times. The final frame before the glitch cuts out shows the open Bible on the hallway floor. She calls Mrs. Delaney the next morning, tells her everything: the drawings, the voice, the shadow, the typed message, the glitch. The old woman listens silently. Then after a long pause, she says, "He doesn't like when you take her attention. He was alone with her for a long time. That kind of thing doesn't let go easy." Claire whispers, "What is he?" Delaney breathes softly into the line. "He's what fills the space when love is gone." Claire doesn't know how to fight something made of absence. The apartment isn't haunted by a ghost. It's haunted by what's missing. By the years, Isabel spent alone, whispering into walls that never answered, drawing to no one, humming herself to sleep, while the building breathed around her. And now that Claire has stepped in, filled a silence, she's become part of that pattern. The space between, the attention, a new presence in the walls. Something colder, darker has noticed, and it wants her out. She tries leaving the apartment for longer periods, takes walks to nowhere, riding the subway with no direction, wandering through bookstores just to see strangers' faces. But even with blocks of city between her and that hallway, she feels the watching. She finds herself turning to look at vents in coffee shop ceilings, or noticing the rhythm of her own footsteps and wondering if something else is matching them. One afternoon, she returns to find the bookshelf moved. Not just shifted, pulled fully away from the wall. The panel is open. Inside, a single piece of lined paper sits folded. Claire kneels, stomach tight, and opens it. Stop talking to her. No signature, no drawing. But the pressure behind the words is heavy. She places the paper on the table, then pulls out every salt container she owns. She doesn't make a ring. She makes a barrier lining the vent, the bookshelf, the doorway to the hall. A clear division, a line she hopes it cannot cross. That night, the apartment is deathly still. Not even the pipes groan. Around 1:00 a.m., she hears it, the sound of something pacing behind the wall. Not light like Isabel. These steps are heavy, deliberate, back and forth, scraping the wood behind the drywall. Then the voice again, low and near her ear like breath fogging glass. She was mine first. Claire doesn't move, doesn't breathe. Only when the pacing stops does she slowly shift glance toward the vent and whisper, "You left her." "I didn't." Nothing answers, but the walls stay awake the rest of the night. The next morning, the salt line in front of the bedroom is scattered. Not disturbed, exploded. The grains are sprayed out in jagged streaks like something burst through it. Claire doesn't clean it. She walks over it, Barefoot pours herself a cup of coffee with hands that barely stop shaking and returns to the couch. On the coffee table sits a small piece of a music box, a silver wind-up key. She hasn't seen that in over a decade. It belonged to her childhood jewelry box, the one lost during a move when she was 12. She picks it up. It's warm. The key stays on the table all day. Claire doesn't touch it again, but she doesn't throw it away either. Something about it feels personal in a way nothing else has. Not like the crayons or the drawings, those were from Isabel, delicate and childlike. But this object feels stolen, taken from memory, dug up from the locked basement of her life, and placed in front of her like a warning. We know you. The unspoken part. We can reach further than you think. She starts noticing small changes after that. Her toothbrush moves half an inch to the left. Her phone wakes her at exactly 3:33 a.m., 3 nights in a row with no alarm set. The faucet drips a single drop every 7 seconds like a ticking clock. She begins counting them without meaning to. 7, 14, 21. When she loses count, she has to start again. It becomes a compulsion, a background rhythm to her every movement. And always, there's the sense of being watched, not by Isabel, but something else. Something taller. Something that waits behind the drywall, smiling with no face. She stops sleeping altogether. She dozes, but never truly rests. When she dreams, it's always the same hallway, stretching longer with each night, lined with vents instead of doors. Behind each grate, a single eye, all of them open, unblinking. At the end of the hall, Isabel sits on the floor with her head bowed, crayon in hand. She draws and never looks up. Claire calls to her, but her voice makes no sound. Then the hallway bends unnaturally, like it's folding in on itself, and the eyes all turn away from her towards something coming up from behind. Claire runs. She never makes it out. One evening, she tries something different. She writes a note. Carefully, deliberately, on a blank white index card. I don't want to hurt her. I want to help. She slides it into the vent like a peace offering. An hour passes, then 2. Then the humming starts. Not Isabel's tune this time. Something slower, lower, wrong. Like the same melody being played backward. The vent cover rattles once, then stills. In the morning, the index card is returned. On the back, scrawled in black ink, is one word, liar. Claire stops leaving notes after that. Claire no longer feels the boundary between the apartment and herself. The space is soaked into her skin, into her breath, into the weight in her chest that never goes away now. Days blur into a quiet routine of avoidance and observation. She watches the vents, counts the seconds between pipe clicks, listens for movement inside the walls. The girl, Isabel, has grown quiet. The light footsteps and soft humming have ceased. It's not the peaceful kind of silence, not the restful stillness of a child gone to sleep, but the thick, waiting quiet of someone hiding. Someone afraid. The attention in the apartment has shifted, tilted towards something colder. Claire senses it everywhere, not just in the walls, but beneath the floorboards, behind the light switches, inside the dark corners of cupboards. It's in the way shadows stretch slightly too long in the evening, how reflections in the window lag behind her movements. The entity, whatever it is, doesn't announce itself anymore. It doesn't need to. Its presence is an infection. It waits with patience sharpened by years. And lately, she feels it drawing closer. One night she begins to hear breathing, not light and nervous like Isabel's used to be, but slow and heavy, like the rasp of lungs filled with dust. It starts at the vent near the couch, then migrates. Behind the kitchen tiles, inside the coat closet, just past the door frame to the bathroom. It's never loud, never threatening, but it's unmistakable. measured, rhythmic exhalation like something enormous is resting just beyond the drywall, its face pressed near the surface. Claire pretends not to notice. She doesn't acknowledge it, doesn't flinch or speak. Instead, she begins placing small gifts back into the old marble stones she finds on her walks, scraps of ribbon, folded paper, cranes. Each one disappears by morning. None are returned. She doesn't know who takes them now. One evening, as dusk begins to sink into the apartment and the corners lose definition, Claire finds a new drawing wedged behind the radiator. This one is older. Faded pencil on yellowed paper, the corners curled inward, like it's been handled too many times. It shows a spiral staircase descending deep into black. Around it, thin stick figures dangle from the walls like insects clinging to glass. At the base of the staircase is a single large figure drawn in thick, shaky lines. It has no face, just a wide circle, where the head should be filled with scratchy spirals. At the bottom, in nearly illegible scrawl, "He lives in the spaces we forget to look." She doesn't sleep that night. Instead, she sits on the floor, back against the couch, all lights on, wrapped in 2 blankets. The apartment creaks like it's breathing through old lungs. Around 2:00 a.m., her vision begins to blur from exhaustion. Then the hallway light flickers once and dies, leaving that part of the apartment in sudden, suffocating dark. Claire doesn't move. Her mouth goes dry. She hears it again, breathing not behind the wall, but in the hallway, open and free. A soft dragging follows like something large pulling its limbs across the floor. Then silence. Then a whisper too low to understand. But it's not Isabel. A moment later, something lands on the floor near her. She flinches but doesn't scream. Her fingers tremble as she reaches out and picks it up. A photograph, black and white. A little girl sitting in the corner of a small room, arms wrapped around her knees, staring directly at the camera. The room is familiar metal walls vent above a single crayon mark behind her shoulder. It's Isabel, but older than Claire expected. Maybe 12. Her expression isn't scared. It's blank. The back of the photo has one word in smudged pencil. Still. Claire drops the photo. She whispers, "Why are you doing this?" No answer comes. But the breathing continues just behind the hallway wall, steady as a tide. The next morning, the photograph is gone. So is the old drawing. The Bible, which she hadn't touched in days, lies open on the floor beside the bed pages torn as if by wind. She begins to realize something. Isabel isn't just hiding. She's being kept away. Claire doesn't speak for 2 days. Her voice becomes a stranger to her own ears, a distant memory wrapped in the caution of silence. She moves like a shadow through the apartment, avoiding mirrors and reflections, unsure of what she'll see if she stares too long. The apartment has grown darker, not in light, but in presence. It's as if something has draped itself over the space, a thick, invisible cloth muffling the world from her senses. The entity in the walls, the one that is not Isabel, no longer needs to announce itself with whispers or knocks. It has settled in, like mold in a house forgotten by time, and Claire feels it in the heaviness of her limbs, in the way her thoughts come slower, less sharp. She's not being haunted. She's being absorbed. The drawings stop. No crayons appear, no childlike humming, no messages in corners or vents. Only the quiet and the weight of something enormous watching her every movement. Claire starts leaving food, uneaten water untouched, and still the apartment gives her no peace. She finds herself waking in new places on the floor beside the vent halfway under the bed, once even standing in the hallway, her hand pressed to the drywall as though listening for a heartbeat inside. The nights bleed into mornings with no clear line, and when she dreams, it's always of narrow tunnels now winding endless, not like vents anymore, but like veins. alive, throbbing. One morning, she wakes to find a word scratched into the paint above the couch. Not written, but gouged small, repeated strokes of something sharp. Forgotten. The same word appears above the bathroom mirror hours later, then on the ceiling above her bed, then worst of all, across her own collarbone in the reflection of a mirror. No actual wound, just the word written in reversed letters like a stain on the glass. She wipes at it, breath hitching, and the word vanishes. But she sees it again when she turns away, lingering just at the edge of her vision. The thing behind the walls is pushing, now testing boundaries, seeking cracks in her resistance. She tries playing music. Classical soft piano, even white noise, anything to drown out the silence. But the speakers crackle with static within seconds, every note distorted until the sound is unbearable. The lights flicker even during the day. She walks past windows and sees her own reflection delay just a second behind, but long enough to chill her spine. She speaks again, finally whispers to the vent, her voice hoarse and dry. Isabel, please. I know you're still here. I'm still here too. No reply. She tries again. You don't have to be alone. Hours pass. Then just before dusk, she hears a thud from inside the vent. She rushes to it, heart hammering, and opens the cover. A small object rests inside her green crayon, the one she gave weeks ago, now cracked in half. Wrapped around it is a torn corner of a drawing. She pulls it out carefully and unfolds it. It's incomplete, only the top half of a figure visible. But it's her eyes, her hair. But drawn not as she sees herself, drawn, frightened, mouth open, looking up at something towering above her. The bottom half of the page has been ripped away. She looks into the vent and whispers, "What is he?" And this time a voice answers. Not Isabel's, not the other things either, but her own voice played back at her from the vent, warbled and wrong. What is he? What is he? What is he? It repeats until she slams the cover shut. Later that night, the lights go out again. Not a flicker this time, total black. The city beyond her window is there, but dim, distant. The apartment swallows her. She moves slowly, hands stretched ahead, feeling for the couch for something solid. Her foot kicks something small. She kneels and picks it up. It's cold, metallic. When the lights snap back on 10 seconds later, she sees what she's holding. A pacifier. Old, cracked with age, stained at the edges. She drops it like it burns. She retreats into the bedroom, locks the door and curls under the blanket. The air in the room turns colder. Her ears ring. Then from the vent above the closet, a whisper. He found her first. He keeps the ones who forget. Claire buries her face in the pillow, tries to will herself invisible. In the morning, all the furniture is moved. Not randomly arranged in a perfect circle in the center of the living room, like a ritual. And in the center of it, one of Isabel's drawings, folded perfectly. She opens it with trembling hands. A single word in red crayon: run. Claire doesn't run. Not because she isn't afraid she is, but because somewhere deep inside her, she knows it won't matter. Whatever is in the apartment, in the walls, in the places she can't see, it isn't tied to this unit or this building in any way that makes sense. It's not confined by bricks or nails. It's attached to Isabel, to her, maybe even to everyone who's ever been vulnerable enough to listen to the wrong silence. Running wouldn't help. It would only make it harder to hear the warning when it came again. Still, the message in the drawing run burns in her brain like a final breath before drowning. She spends the next hour undoing the furniture circle, dragging the coffee table back to the window, flipping the armchair upright, putting the bookshelf back against the wall. But the moment she turns her back, one of the chairs slides 3 inches toward the center of the room on its own. She hears it. The scrape is unmistakable. Claire doesn't look. She just stands there, back to the thing, holding her breath. This is what it wants to be seen, to be acknowledged. But Claire understands now that attention is invitation, so she lets the chair stay where it is. She opens her phone. No signal, no Wi-Fi, no service. The clock reads 3:33 a.m. Impossible because it's still light outside. She closes the app, reopens it. The clock still reads the same. The date has reset to January 1st, 1900. A joke, a glitch, a message. Or maybe just what time looks like when you're not in it anymore. Claire walks into the kitchen and turns on the faucet. The water runs black for the first 3 seconds, then clears. She washes her hands twice, trying to feel human. Tries to exist in something real. But her eyes keep drifting back to the vent. The hum that used to accompany Isabel has vanished, and the weight of that absence is heavier than any ghost. It's like she's been left behind. She moves the vent cover and peers inside with a flashlight. Nothing. She calls softly, Isabel, silence. Then faintly she hears it. Not a voice, not breathing, but scratching. Not near, somewhere deeper, further into the duct system than any child should ever be able to crawl. It comes in bursts, then stops, then comes again. Slow, measured, desperate. She pulls back and closes the vent. She knows what's coming. That night, she sleeps in the bathroom with the door locked and her back pressed to the tub. The air in the apartment has gone wrong again. Heavier. Not just a presence, but a shift. Like the building has twisted slightly off its foundation, and no one else noticed. Somewhere around midnight, the mirror begins to fog. No steam, no heat, just a slow, creeping mist. Claire watches from the floor as a single word forms in the fog below. She rises and wipes it away with her sleeve. The moment the word disappears, the knocking starts this time. Not in threes, not playful or pleading, but a steady pound. Over and over. A hammering from inside the walls, from under the floorboards above the ceiling. It's everywhere. A full-body presence shaking the space from within. Claire covers her ears. It doesn't help. It stops all at once. The silence that follows is somehow worse. In the morning, she walks through the apartment like a stranger. Every corner feels unfamiliar. Even her own reflection moves slower than she does. She opens the bedroom window for the first time in weeks, lets in the smell of the city. A child plays somewhere in the street below, laughing. The sound makes her chest tighten. When she turns back around, a new photograph lies on her pillow. Not a drawing. A real photograph, faded but crisp. It shows a ventilation shaft cracked open with a face half visible inside. A pale eye, a cheek, fingers clinging to the edge. It's not Isabel. It's not her. The proportions are wrong, elongated, skeletal. And the face is grinning, not smiling. Grinning with teeth that don't quite fit the mouth. She flips the photo over. On the back is a message not written in crayon or typed, but burned into the surface like it had been pressed with a hot wire. You let her sleep. Now I'm awake. Claire doesn't scream. She just walks to the living room, sits in the chair that moved by itself, and waits for the light to fade. The light fades slowly that evening, bleeding through the apartment windows like a dying pulse. Claire doesn't move from the chair. She watches as the colors shift gold to gray to blue, then that final stage absence. The city dims behind the glass, but the apartment dims from within. It's not just about electricity. It's the sense that the walls themselves are swallowing light, feeding on it, thickening in shadow. The air grows colder, not just in temperature, but in tone. as if the very space around her were changing texture. The quiet returns, but it isn't peace. It's expectation. The kind of stillness before something breaks. She doesn't turn on any lamps. She doesn't light a candle. She simply waits. The drawing appears on the coffee table an hour later. It wasn't there before. She would have seen it. But now it's centered perfectly on the wood. No breeze to move it. No sound to announce its arrival. It's done in charcoal smudged around the edges like it had been drawn in haste. This one is different from the others, more detailed, less childlike. It shows her apartment but seen from above like a blueprint. Only there are new rooms, hidden ones, narrow paths behind the walls, shafts that descend, small square crawl spaces between the bedrooms. And in each of those narrow spaces, a figure. Some curled up, some standing, some watching. But only one is moving, drawn with a trail of heavy lines following it. The one nearest her, the one behind her. Claire doesn't turn around. She knows the game now. She closes her eyes and breathes. The floor beneath the chair creaks softly like something shifting weight from below. Then a knock from underneath. Not on the wall. Not on the ceiling. From under the floorboards. She opens her eyes slowly. Another knock. Then a second drawing slides out from under the bookshelf, as if pushed by a slow, deliberate hand. She gets up and crosses the room, never taking her eyes off the edges of the apartment. She kneels and pulls the paper into the light. This one is a face, not human, not entirely. It has eyes too many, all clustered unevenly, a mouth too wide, no nose. Its neck is long and curves like wire bent too many times. The paper smells burnt. On the back, written in cramped red ink, they don't all want out. Some want in. Claire stands. She walks to the bookshelf and moves it, hands shaking, breath held. The panel behind it is ajar. The vent is open, not broken, opened as if from inside. She drops to her knees and peers in with a flashlight. At first nothing. Dust, an old battery, a paper clip. Then movement. A small hand Isabel's grips the edge of the vent from deep inside. The fingers tremble. Dirty. Thin. Then her face appears, pale, hollow-eyed, but present. Claire exhales sharply, dropping the flashlight. It rolls to the side beam, spilling across the floor. Isabel doesn't crawl forward. She stays in the darkness, only her face visible. Then she whispers, barely audible. He doesn't live in the walls. He lives in the spaces between thoughts. Claire doesn't understand. But she doesn't ask. She simply holds still and listens. Isabel continues. He was quiet until you started thinking of me. Until I mattered. Now he wants to matter more. Claire whispers, how do I stop him? Isabel's eyes shift left, then right, like she's afraid to say it aloud. Then she pushes something through the vent, a drawing, folded, wet at the edges. Claire unfolds it. It shows herself again, sitting in the chair. But this time, the figure in the walls is behind her, reaching through with arms that twist like Vine's fingers brushing her hair. Below the image, the words, "Stop remembering me, or he'll become you." Claire feels it then. Not cold, not fear, but familiarity. Like something inside her has already begun turning. She places the drawing face down on the floor, and for the first time in days, she speaks with certainty. I'm not afraid of him. Behind the vent, Isabel's eyes widen, and then vanish. The panel closes on its own. The chair shifts. The lights go out. Darkness folds over the apartment like a wet cloth. Not immediate, but slow, deliberate, creeping from the corners inward. Claire doesn't move. She stays seated, her body still, but not relaxed, like a deer waiting to hear the second snap of a branch. The room grows colder, but not in a way that pricks the skin. This cold is internal, like a memory surfacing that you didn't know you had. Her eyes adjust enough to see outlines, shadows trembling where they shouldn't. The panel in the wall is shut again. The drawing lies face down at her feet. She doesn't pick it up. She breathes. That's all she does for the next 10 minutes. Breathe and wait. The walls don't knock. The floor doesn't groan. The vent doesn't rattle. But something shifts inside her. An impression, vague and steady. Like a voice preparing to speak, but never quite forming sound. It presses against her mind, against the edge of thought itself, not invading, just waiting for space. Then she sees the first change. A dark stain has appeared near the ceiling, just above the bedroom door. It grows slowly in silence, spreading like ink dropped in water. No source, no leak. It's not even wet, just a mark seeping wider, more irregular by the second. Claire watches without standing. There's no point anymore in pretending surprise. She's beyond that. The house is no longer misbehaving. It's evolving. Then from the hallway, a low hum. Not Isabel's tune. Not the inverted melody from before. This is different. Deep. Metallic. The kind of sound a building makes when it mourns. Claire rises. Not because she wants to, but because something in the hum requires witness. She walks toward the hallway, barefoot, her steps measured. The light fixture flickers above her as she passes under it, casting her shadow forward against the far wall stretched unnaturally tall. She doesn't look at it. She reaches the bedroom and stops. The door is ajar. Inside, the stain has spread across the ceiling, like veins trailing toward the vent above her bed. A single new drawing is pinned to the wall dead center. No tape, no tack, just there. She takes a step closer. The drawing is of a woman, older, hollow-eyed mouth sewn shut with thread. Hands held out, not pleading, but offering. Below the image in red crayon, "You are becoming the space." Claire exhales through her nose slowly. "No," she whispers. "I'm not." But she's lying, because she knows what the message means. It's not just metaphor. Whatever is in the walls, whatever he is, he doesn't kill. He hollows, empties, wears the living like a suit of echoes. And the more Claire allows herself to listen, to connect, to remember, the closer he gets. She stumbles backward into the hallway. Her foot hits something. She looks down. It's the photograph again. The one of the face in the vent. But this time, the image has changed. The mouth is open now. Wider. And from the ink, a red smear seeps outward like real blood soaking the paper. She drops it and turns. The air behind her vibrates. She hears footsteps, not hers. Claire runs, not out of the apartment. There's nowhere safer out there. She knows this thing isn't tied to a space, it's tied to her attention. So she runs into the space she's feared most, the wall. She pulls the bookshelf away in one shove, fingers slipping against the wood. The panel resists, then opens. She crawls into the crawl space with the flashlight clenched in her teeth, breathing in decades of dust and rot. The passage narrows, turns. She follows the only path she remembers from the drawings. 10 feet in, she finds it, Isabel, kneeling in the corner of a narrow shaft, eyes wide, shaking. She doesn't look hurt. She looks small. Claire reaches her. The girl doesn't speak, just hands her a crayon green broken in half and points. Claire turns the light. At the far end of the shaft, just visible in the trembling beam, something waits. A shape. Not full, not real, not yet. A smear of blackness with human suggestions, shoulders too long, fingers like cords of wire, a head that tilts like it's listening through water. It doesn't move, it just waits. And from the shadows, a voice, not a whisper, but a presence presses into her ears like pressure in a sinking submarine. Every moment you remember her, I fill the space she leaves behind. Claire reaches back. grabs Isabel's hand, and closes her eyes. Claire keeps her eyes shut. Not from fear, but from instinct. The kind of instinct that tells you not to stare into headlights before impact. The space around her vibrates, not like sound, but like the weight of something immense shifting its gaze. The air thickens. Dust floats like ash in her throat. Her fingers grip Isabel's small hand, tightly grounding herself. The pressure in the shaft builds, and with it, that deep humming presence inches closer. She doesn't need to see it. She can feel the shape of it, long, slow stretching to fill the crawl space like liquid shadow. It doesn't crawl, it pours. The voice returns, and this time it doesn't speak through ears. It's in her mind, rubbing against the rawest parts of thought where memories are soft and fraying. She belonged to me first. You opened the wall. You gave her shape again. That shape was mine to keep. The words pull at her memories of Isabel, the drawings, the humming, the warmth behind the crayon gifs. Claire feels them slipping, not vanishing, but being rewritten. The memories darken, warp at the edges. She sees Isabel's face morphing in her mind's eye, the softness draining the voice, shifting lower. This is what it wants. Not her fear, not her body. Her belief, her version of Isabel. If it can take that, it can become her. She bites the inside of her cheek hard enough to taste blood. I remember her, she says aloud, her voice shaking. I remember her, not you. The presence halts. Isabel's grip tightens. Claire opens her eyes. The vent shaft is darker now. The flashlight in her hand flickers, struggling against something it can't illuminate. The shape in the tunnel hasn't advanced, but it's grown. It now fills the entire corridor, blotting out the end like ink spilled across a blueprint. But it no longer hums. It listens. She lifts Isabel, gently shifts the girl behind her, shielding her as best she can in the tight space. Go back, Claire whispers. Slowly. I'll follow. But Isabel doesn't move. Her small hand reaches forward again, not toward the darkness, but toward the wall. She places her palm on a patch of rusted metal and presses. The metal groans. A click. A seam appears, another hidden panel. A way out. Claire helps push it open. It leads into a crawl space above the ceiling, another path she never noticed. But as the panel opens fully, the presence behind them shifts again, forward this time. Claire doesn't wait. She pushes Isabel through and follows. The panel closes behind them with a soft slam, and silence falls like a curtain. The shaft above the ceiling is narrow but dry warmer. Claire breathes deeply, coughing as the stale air scrapes her lungs. They crawl in silence for several feet before light filters in a faint orange glow from a broken overhead fixture. They emerge through a square vent that opens into the building's old maintenance room. Claire lifts Isabel down gently and closes the vent. She turns the rusted lock behind them. It won't stop him, she knows. Not for long. But it buys them something. Time. They collapse against the wall, the girl beside her trembling, but still silent. Claire places her hand on Isabel's shoulder, waiting. Listening. The room hums with the gentle throb of electricity. Old breaker boxes line the walls, covered in labels from decades ago. One door in the corner leads to the stairwell, the other to the old freight elevator shaft. Claire looks at both, and then at Isabel. What does he want? Claire asks softly. Isabel stares ahead, voice quiet as paper to be known. Claire feels the answer settle in her bones. That's what's always been inside the walls. Not just a monster. Not just an echo. A story twisting in the dark, hungry to be told. And now that she's heard it, it doesn't want to let her go. The maintenance room feels like a pocket of reality barely holding together. The walls hum with residual power, the kind of background noise you only notice once everything else has gone quiet. Claire presses her back to the cold concrete and lets her head rest against the wall. Isabel sits beside her knees, hugged to her chest, her eyes locked on the floor. Neither of them speaks for a long while. The silence between them isn't empty. It's full, stretched tight with what they've both seen, and what they both know is still out there. Claire closes her eyes for a second, just one, and immediately regrets it. Behind her lids vents narrow tunnels, 100 eyes blinking in unison. The shape, the voice, its grin opening wider each time she remembers. Her own thoughts betray her, offering the thing more shape, more room to breathe inside her memory. She opens her eyes and says quietly, "We have to stop giving him space." Isabel doesn't look up. Her voice is soft, cracked. He lives in forgotten places. When you remember them, he has to leave. He doesn't belong in stories people talk about. Claire nods. It makes a strange kind of sense. The drawings, the whispers, the attention, all of it like pulling a thread on an old sweater. The more she focused, the more form he took. But now that she knows, now that she's seen him, the question becomes, how do you forget something that won't let go? She pushes herself up slowly, legs, weak body sore. The door to the stairwell opens with a rusty whine. Concrete steps spiral downward into the sub-basement. She shines her flashlight into the dark. The beam cuts through floating dust, but doesn't reach the bottom. "We go down," she says. Isabel doesn't move. Claire turns. "He's still behind us. You feel it too." Isabel nods once. Her hand trembles as she takes Claire's. They descend in silence, each step deeper than the last. The walls grow damper, more cracked. Old graffiti peeks through the mildew. Strange symbols, doodles, names half erased. When they reach the bottom landing, the air is thick and damp, and the hallway before them stretches longer than the building should allow. Old maintenance doors line the corridor, all sealed with rusted chains. Except one. It's open. Claire shines her light inside. It's a narrow service room, walls lined with pipe and wire, the far side broken open to reveal what looks like a dead-end crawl space. But something about the space is wrong. It bends inward, like gravity folds slightly there. She steps inside. Isabel follows. At the end of the room, resting on an overturned bucket, sits a box. An old wooden thing scorched at the corners. Claire lifts the lid slowly. Inside drawings, not new ones, not Isabel's. These are brittle, yellowed with age, drawn in charcoal and ink. Dozens of them, hundreds. All of the same thing, variations of a tall, faceless figure, looming over beds, crouched behind doors, curled into the shadows beneath staircases. Claire flips through them one by one. Some signed only with initials MC, LP, DS. She looks at Isabel. "You weren't the first." Isabel nods. Claire places the drawings on the ground and lights a match from the old emergency kit on the wall. She drops it onto the pile. The paper blackens fast, curls into ash. Smoke fills the small space, thick and gray. The shapes fade into flame one by one, devoured by heat. Behind them in the corridor, something screams. Not human, not animal. A roar of frustration, like a voice losing its throat. The walls shake. The pipes groan. Isabel covers her ears. Claire pulls her close, shielding her as dust rains from above. Then silence. The air clears. Claire rises, chest-heaving, ears ringing. She knows it isn't over. But something has changed. The weight is lighter, the shape in her memory less clear. She can still feel him. But now he's fading. They don't speak as they climb the stairs back up through the building's bowels. The silence isn't tense now. It's exhausted. The kind that follows a scream that drained something out of the world. Claire holds Isabel's hand tightly, the girl's small fingers warm, despite the cold air licking at their ankles through the open spaces in the stairwell. The burn from the fire still lingers on her skin, not from flame, but from memory. Every drawing that turned to ash took something with it. some thread of the presence that had wound itself into the bones of the apartment. Not just this building, maybe, but buildings like it. Claire doesn't let herself consider how far it stretches. She's not ready for that thought. Not yet. They reach the 6th floor landing and pause. The air is still. The hallway is unchanged. The door to 6B stands closed, untouched. But Claire feels different as she approaches it. Lighter, not safe, not victorious, but returned. She unlocks the door and steps inside. The apartment is just as she left it. Furniture where it should be, vents closed. No drawings waiting on the table. The lights flicker once, then settle. For the first time in weeks, she doesn't feel eyes behind her. She turns slowly, scanning every corner. No whispers, no misplaced objects. Isabel lets go of her hand and walks into the living room. She stops beside the coffee table and picks up the broken green crayon Claire had given her days ago. It's still warm. Claire kneels beside her. "Do you think he's gone?" Isabel doesn't answer at first. Then she says softly, "Not gone. Just small again." Claire frowns. "Can he come back?" Isabel shrugs like a child who knows more than she can explain. "Only if someone lets him grow." Claire nods slowly. That's what it was all along. The attention, the remembering, the fear. It wasn't haunting, it was feeding. An entity that lives in spaces unspoken in stories we carry, but never tell out loud. She thinks of all the strange feelings she's had in empty hallways, the dread in basements, the chill in stairwells. How many times had she brushed against something like him and not known it? How many others still are? Later, while Isabel sleeps curled up on the couch beneath a blanket, Claire begins collecting every last trace. The drawings, the photographs, even the Bible that had long since lost its comfort. She places them all in a trash bag and walks 3 blocks to a public bin. Not to burn them this time, just to remove them. To let them drift into the anonymous churn of the city's forgetfulness. She doesn't look back until she's home again. The apartment is quiet, peaceful even. But Claire knows peace is a living thing. It needs maintenance, vigilance. She walks to the wall behind the bookshelf and gently places her palm against it. It's cool now. Still, no pulse. She pulls the shelf back into place. The sun rises slowly over the city. She pours 2 cups of tea, one for herself, one for the girl, and places them both on the table without a word. When Isabel wakes, she climbs into the chair opposite Claire without hesitation. They sit in silence, steam curling between them, the glow of morning stretching long across the floor. Something inside the wall creaks, just once. Claire doesn't react. She won't give it a name. Not ever again. Days pass. Time begins to make sense again. Claire wakes to sun instead of darkness. The sound of plumbing becomes mundane again, not the heartbeat of something watching. She doesn't check the vents every morning. She doesn't whisper into walls. The apartment feels empty, but in the best way possible. Stillness, not silence. Solitude, not isolation. Isabel remains quiet but different now. Her steps no longer hover like secrets. They land softly with the certainty of someone who knows they're allowed to take up space. Claire finds herself watching the girl sometimes, not out of concern, but curiosity. Isabel never says where she goes when she disappears into the crawl spaces, never explains what she knows or how she knows it. She just watches, listens, and occasionally draws. The drawings have changed too. Gone are the dark tunnels, the crooked figures, the twisted mouths. Now she draws open windows, trees, birds in mid-flight. Her lines are more careful, more certain. Sometimes Claire joins her, and they draw in silence. No words, no instructions, just the steady movement of hands across paper. It becomes their language, but Claire can feel something still lingers. Not him, not anymore, but an imprint, like the smell of smoke days after the fire. She feels it in the quiet moments when she forgets to think, when she zones out brushing her teeth or loses time while staring out the window. A presence on the edge of awareness, not watching, just waiting for an invitation. And now she knows better than to give it one. She starts making changes to the apartment. Nothing major, just small acts of reclaiming. A new coat of paint on the wall behind the couch. A bright rug in the hallway. Plants on the windowsill. Light and color, not as decoration, but defense. Every choice a rejection of shadows. She even buys a new lamp shaped like a sunflower. Isabel plugs it in without a word, and they both sit and watch its warm yellow glow reach up the wall like soft armor. One afternoon, Claire finds a final drawing folded beneath the couch. It's the only one Isabel hasn't shown her willingly. She opens it slowly, unsure what she'll find. It's a picture of the apartment, the living room to be exact, but empty. No people, no furniture, just a wide open space and the outlines of vents on every wall. On the back, scrawled in tiny blocky letters, he lived in the spaces. But so did we. Claire folds it and places it in the kitchen drawer, not to hide it, but to keep it, to remember, to honor what was real and what was endured. That night, as she brushes her hair in front of the mirror, she feels a shift behind her. A breeze, a soft exhale. She turns slowly. Isabel stands at the doorway watching. "I think I'm ready," the girl says. Claire lowers the brush. "Ready for what? To go?" Claire blinks. "Where?" Isabel looks toward the wall. Not in fear, not in longing, just recognition. Where I was before, but not alone this time. Claire swallows. "You don't have to go." "I know," Isabel says, "but it's quieter now. I think the walls are listening to themselves again." She walks toward the vent and kneels beside it, fingers brushing the metal edges. Claire hesitates, then kneels too. She takes Isabel's hand. "I'll remember you," Claire says. "Don't," Isabel replies gently. "Not too much." The panel opens with a soft sigh, like an old door, finally understanding it doesn't need to creak. Isabel slips inside without fear. She turns back once and smiles, then disappears into the dark. The panel closes. No slam, no knock, just quiet. Claire sits there for a long time, then slowly rises. She makes tea, opens the window, and lets the light flood in. The days after Isabel's departure feel unnaturally bright. The kind of light that comes after a long power outage, too clean, too sudden. Claire walks through the apartment with soft steps, not because she's afraid anymore, but because it feels like stepping through the final act of a dream. She expects her shadow to flicker behind her. She expects the bookshelf to creak or a crayon to roll off the table by itself. But nothing moves, nothing whispers. The walls are just walls again, solid, quiet, indifferent. She keeps the vents closed, not sealed, just gently shut like doors to a guest room no one visits anymore. She no longer checks for drawings, but sometimes she catches herself glancing at the corners of the floor or behind the radiator, half expecting a folded note. Nothing ever appears. She tells herself that's a good thing, that normalcy is returning, that she has been given the rare chance to finish something most people don't even know they've started. But beneath that thought is another more dangerous one. The fear that peace is temporary, that he is still out there. So Claire begins documenting. At first, it's just in a notebook. She sketches the floor plan of the apartment, annotates the strange shifts in light she experienced during those weeks, logs the exact phrases she remembers from both Isabel and the voice behind the walls. She details the sound of the breathing, The rhythm of the knocking, the precise feeling in her chest before a drawing would appear. Then she starts typing. A long file on her laptop, structured like a journal, but written with an audience in mind. She's not sure who it's for yet, herself maybe, or whoever moves into 6B next. Whoever starts to hear tapping and doesn't know the rules. But as she writes, she realizes something. The more she remembers, the clearer he becomes. The details of his shape, those terrible 2 long limbs that spiral-shaped grin, the dark eye holes too wide for the skull, begin returning to her, just as vivid as in the beginning. The dreams start again. Not violent, not terrifying, just familiar. A hallway that shouldn't be there. A mirror that blinks when she doesn't. A vent that slowly opens not by force, but by invitation. She deletes the document. The entire thing. Recycles the notebook too. Pours water on every remaining drawing she'd forgotten to toss. Watches the ink bleed into paper, dissolving lines like washing away footsteps. That night the dreams stop again, but something else replaces them. A single hum. Once. Not a melody, just a vibration through the bed frame as she drifts towards sleep. And this time it doesn't feel like Isabel. The next day, Claire boards a train out of the city. She tells herself it's temporary, that she just needs airspace somewhere new. She leaves the apartment clean. No forwarding address, no written message. Just the empty space, the closed vents, the memory of quiet. As the train pulls away, she watches the skyline blur and wonders, not for the first time, whether the walls miss her the way they once missed Isabel. Whether in the shifting dark spaces between drywall and duct, something begins to stir the moment she forgets. 3 hours into the journey, as the sun sets against the glass, she reaches into her coat pocket for her earbuds. Instead, her fingers close around something familiar. She pulls it out. A crayon. Green. Whole. Still warm. Claire stares at the crayon in her palm for a long time, the soft plastic wrapper slightly wrinkled, the tip dulled, like it's been used before, but not by her. She turns it over once, twice. There's no residue, no markings. Just a perfectly intact green crayon. The one she gave Isabel. The one she watched disappear into the vent days ago. It shouldn't be here. Not in this jacket. Not 3 hours away from the apartment. Not after everything had burned. She closes her fingers around it slowly, like pressing it too tightly might summon something she can't take back. Then she places it on the tray table in front of her eyes, fixed on the green wax as if it might twitch. It doesn't. The other passengers murmur quietly behind her, the sounds of shuffling bags, plastic snack wrappers, the occasional cough. No one notices the crayon. No one feels the shift in pressure that's begun again, so faint it could be mistaken for motion sickness or nerves. But Claire knows better. She recognizes the feeling of a story opening behind her like a trap door. She spends the next hour deciding what to do. Throw it away. Hold on to it. Pretend she never saw it. The idea that Isabel gave it back comforts her for a fleeting moment. Maybe it's a farewell, a sign that the bond between them still exists. But a deeper, colder part of her suspects otherwise. The weight of the crayon is wrong. Slightly heavier than it should be. Almost as if something lives inside it. Not a soul, not a presence. A seed. She wraps it in a napkin and slips it back into her pocket, sealing the fabric tight. It's not much protection, but she's learned the danger isn't in the object itself. It's in what you let it become. She doesn't look at it again that day. When she arrives at her new temporary housing, a short-term rental in a quiet wooded suburb, Claire takes deliberate steps. She inspects the vents, measures the walls, opens every closet, checks behind every mirror. It's not paranoia. It's maintenance, like brushing teeth or locking doors. She's no longer afraid of the dark, but she respects it now. She knows how quickly it makes space for things to grow. The cottage is simple. One floor, sparse furniture, fewer hiding places. That first night, she places the wrapped crayon in the freezer, inside a glass jar lid tightly sealed. Not to trap anything, just to buy time. But she doesn't sleep. She lies in bed with the covers pulled up to her collarbone, staring at the ceiling as shadows from trees outside crawl across the room. They don't move unnaturally, but her eyes track them anyway. The air is still, clean. Nothing creaks, nothing breathes behind the walls until 3:09 a.m. A tap, not a knock, not a whisper. Just a light, precise tap on the floor near the foot of her bed. She doesn't move. Another tap. Then silence. She rises slowly and walks barefoot to the kitchen. Opens the freezer. The jar is still there, frost hugging the glass. She lifts it, unwraps the napkin. The crayon is gone. In its place, a folded square of paper. Her hands tremble as she opens it. Inside is a drawing. Not of Isabel, not of Claire, just a door. A thin rectangle drawn in black with no handle. Just a small slit at the top where something maybe eyes could peek through. Beneath it, a single word in thin red ink. Remember. Claire doesn't scream, doesn't throw it away. She places the paper back in the jar, reseals the lid, and places it on the highest shelf in the house. Then she takes a deep breath and goes back to bed. Claire begins marking the days on the wall. Tiny slashes in pencil near the window, where the sunlight hits each morning. A habit borrowed from stories of survival, or perhaps confinement. Each line feels like an anchor, a way to prove she's still here, still tethered to time. But she knows the line between memory and presence is thin now. The drawing in the jar, the one with the door, remains untouched. She doesn't open it again. She doesn't need to. She remembers it too well. That slit in the door, the invisible gaze, and that word, remember. Not a plea, not a request, a demand. She finds herself thinking of Isabel, not often, but with weight. She wonders if the girl made it back to wherever it was she came from. If she was ever really from this world to begin with. Sometimes Claire imagines her curled in some far corner of the duct system, watching the world through a pinhole in the drywall. Not trapped, just waiting to be remembered. Claire shakes the thought when it comes. She has to, because she understands now what remembering does. The presence hasn't returned, not fully. But small things begin to shift. Each night at 3:09 a.m., the same faint tapping, always from a new spot. The floor, the cabinet, once from inside the closet door. Nothing aggressive, nothing repeated, just a single polite tap, like a knock too shy to finish. Claire tries ignoring it. For a while it works, until she wakes one night to find her door open. She's sure she locked it. The chain too. But now it swings half an inch, creaking gently in the breeze. She checks the entire house. Nothing is taken, nothing moved. Except for one detail, the jar on the shelf is on the kitchen counter. Still sealed, still cold, but closer. She doesn't sleep that night. The next morning she buries the jar, deep in the woods behind the cottage. She digs until her hands blister. Then she walks away without marking the spot. That evening she finds a new crayon on her pillow, blue, untouched, wrapped in waxed paper like a gift. She burns it in the sink. The flame sputters bright green and smells of burnt hair. That night the tapping returns, louder now, 3 times. Claire whispers into the darkness, "I don't remember you." Silence. Then from inside the wall a low voice, not angry, not pleased. Just a voice. "But I remember you." Claire doesn't reply. She turns on every light, plays music, writes down old memories from her childhood. not the haunted ones, the bright ones. Her mother braiding her hair, the dog she had when she was 10, the first time she saw snow. She writes and writes until the tapping fades. She doesn't hear it again for 5 nights. On the 6th, the light bulbs burst, not all at once. One, then another, then the last flickering defiantly before giving out. The cottage falls dark. Claire lights a single candle and waits. The air hums with stillness. Then she hears it not a tap this time, a slow dragging sound, like something being pulled across the floor. It stops outside her bedroom door. Claire sits up. The knob turns just slightly, not enough to open, just enough to rattle. She speaks clearly, evenly. "You can stay forgotten. You don't belong in me anymore. Nothing." Then the dragging retreats. That night, the candle stays lit until morning. The tapping doesn't return, but a final drawing appears on the windowsill, a single line. No figures, no doors, just a horizontal mark across a blank page, as if to say we are now separate. Claire folds the drawing and buries it where she left the jar. She stops marking the days after that. She no longer needs to. Claire begins to feel like herself again, not all at once, but in fragments. A morning where the coffee tastes right. An evening where she laughs softly at a line in a book. A walk through the woods without glancing over her shoulder. These moments arrive like sunlight through blind slits of clarity, thin but steady. She welcomes them, but she's also careful not to chase them too hard. Joy, she's learned, is not something you seize. It's something you earn the right to carry, piece by piece. The cottage remains quiet. No tapping, no drawings. The air is neutral now. She cleans without ritual. No salt lines, no whispered precautions. She even dares to open the vents one by one, clearing out the dust, brushing away cobwebs. Nothing stares back at her. The shadows in the corners behave. They no longer stretch or sway when she's not looking. Sometimes she finds herself listening too hard, waiting for the crackle of something slipping between walls. But the silence that answers isn't cold anymore. It's just empty. And for the first time in weeks, that feels like a gift. She begins writing again, not documentation this time, but fiction. Little stories. Nothing about haunted buildings or whispered names. Instead, she writes about a girl who plants wildflowers along a forgotten path, and a boy who builds birdhouses in trees no one else can see. She fills notebooks with these stories, leaving the endings open, uncertain, but warm. She reads them aloud sometimes, just to hear herself speak again without fear. The stories are anchors, mirrors, and occasionally offerings. One morning, Claire wakes early just before dawn and sits on the back steps of the cottage wrapped in a blanket. The sky is pale gray birds beginning their morning routine, the trees rustling with soft purpose. She sips tea and watches as the world continues turning slow and careless. That's when she sees it, a figure standing at the edge of the woods, small, still, barefoot. It's Isabel, or at least the outline of her. Claire doesn't panic, doesn't move. She sets her cup down gently and watches. The girl raises a hand, not waving. Just a still gesture, a quiet acknowledgement. Claire returns it. Then the figure turns and vanishes into the trees, footsteps silent against the moss. She doesn't follow. She doesn't need to. She knows now that Isabel never truly needed saving. She just needed someone to see her, to carry her name forward long enough for the silence to let her go. That afternoon, Claire finds one last drawing on her desk, unfolded, placed where her hand would land when reaching for a pen. It's a house. Her house. Windows, wide vents, close the door open to the sun. No figures inside, no shadows in corners, just light pouring out from every line. No words written beneath it. Just a signature for the first time. Isabel Crane. Claire hangs the drawing above her desk, not as a memory, as a promise. Summer folds itself into the landscape like a quiet exhale. The trees thicken with green insects hum through the evenings, and the cottage no longer feels like a borrowed place. It's hers now, not through ownership, but through the rhythms she's created. Morning tea at the same time, walks at dusk, the occasional wordless nod to the fox that crosses the yard without fear. The air inside no longer holds its breath. It breathes with her. Every creak of the floorboard is familiar, nothing hidden beneath. Claire doesn't flinch when the wind rattles the shutters or when the fridge hums in the middle of the night. That old instinct, the one that tensed her shoulders and slowed her breath, has gone quiet. She still writes, daily. The stories change. Now they have endings, gentle ones, some sad, some strange, but all deliberate. She never writes about Isabel, not directly, but sometimes the girls in her stories hum to themselves while drawing in corners. Sometimes a green crayon appears in the margins. Easter eggs, echoes. One night, while sorting through the last of her moving boxes, Claire finds something wrapped in old newspaper at the bottom of a crate she doesn't remember packing. She unwraps it slowly, bracing herself. It's the jar, the same one she buried weeks ago. Frost still on the glass, the lid unbroken. Inside nothing, no drawing, no crayon. Just the faint smell of ash and something older, metallic, like rusted breath. Claire doesn't touch the lid. She walks it calmly outside across the yard, past the woods to the edge of the ravine, where water rushes far below. She places the jar on a rock and watches the current a long while. Then she says aloud softly, as if to no one I remember enough, and lets the jar fall. It breaks on a stone halfway down and disappears into the water. No flash of light. No scream. Just the sound of glass giving up its shape. Claire turns and walks home. That night, her dreams are of nothing in particular. No faces. No voices. Just wind through tall grass and the smell of rain on old stone. She wakes before sunrise and lights a candle, not to ward off shadows, but to welcome the day. As the flame flickers to life, she opens a fresh notebook. On the first page, she writes a house should never remember what it saw, only who made it a home, and beneath it her own name, for the first time in years. No longer a witness, now simply a woman writing in the quiet. Autumn arrives slowly, brushing gold onto the edges of leaves and cooling the air in delicate stages. Claire notices the changes not just in the landscape, but in herself. She no longer counts the days in pencil slashes or measures silence for signs of intrusion. Her routines have deepened into rituals, sweeping leaves from the porch, baking bread on Saturdays, feeding the stray cat that refuses to come inside, but waits always at the edge of the garden. The house has settled too. It creaks like any old cottage would, but never in a way that feels wrong. When the wind moves through the vents, it doesn't whisper anymore, it just moves. The spaces behind the walls are still there, but they no longer stretch or sigh. They've forgotten what it means to hunger, or perhaps they've remembered something else, how to rest. Claire has not spoken about the man in the vent in weeks. Not to herself, not on paper, not in thought. She's trained her mind to leave no room for his name, no corners for his shape to curl into. Forgetting isn't erasure, it's preservation. She has learned the difference. Every moment spent recalling the darkness gave it breath. Now she starves it by living forward. One morning during her walk, she finds something unexpected. A vent cover half buried at the base of a tree. It's old iron brittle with rust. No screws, just the faceplate lying there like a misplaced memory. She studies it. The slats are bent one corner charred, like it had once been too close to fire. Her first thought is to bury it, but she doesn't. Instead, she lifts it gently and carries it home. She hangs it on the back wall of the shed outside the house under sunlight, not hidden. A reminder, not a relic. A way to hold the past without inviting it back in. That night, there is no tapping, no dreams, just the sound of rain against the roof and a breeze carrying the scent of turning leaves through the open window. Claire sleeps deeply wrapped in the quiet she fought for. She wakes just before dawn, makes tea, watches the light spill across the floor, and writes. This time she writes about a woman and a child who share no name but recognize each other in silence. They live in a house where the walls once whispered, but now echo with laughter and the occasional soft song. She doesn't end the story with a warning. She ends it with a door left open not to the dark but to the garden. A door that stays open because no one needs to hide anymore and no one is listening from the other side. You've made it. The story has ended, but the stillness it left behind is just beginning. Close your eyes if they aren't closed already. Let your body sink deeper into your mattress. Take a slow breath in and let it fall gently out. There is nothing chasing you. No knocking, no breathing through vents. Just quiet, just you, and the safety of a story that stayed contained within its pages. You might still feel a lingering tension, the kind that good tales leave behind. Let it pass. Let it fade like shadows at sunrise. This space, your room, your bed, this hour is yours alone. Nothing from this story can follow you here. The walls around you are simply walls. The sounds you hear are only the wind. And if you think of Isabel, let it be as a figure walking away through trees, not looking back. Let her go. Let all of it go. Now return to your breath, gentle, even, each exhale carrying you closer to sleep. Let the dark become a blanket, not a threat. Let the quiet cradle you. And know, no matter what stories you've heard, you are always the one who decides which doors stay closed. Sleep well.